The Jeff Younger Show is on. Dedicated to my sons, James and Jude.
Here's a truth that nobody is ever going to tell you in school. Technical competence will get you in the door, but it won't get you to the top. Choose any two competent people, the one with political savvy, the one who understands how power actually moves through organizations. That person's going to go further every single time. Most people think politics is dirty, something that maybe other people do or something that's even beneath them. A lot of engineers think this way. Those people plateau early and then they wonder why. So today we're going to cover how organizational power actually works and how you stop being naive about it. Let's talk about what politics actually is. Let's define some terms. Politics in organizations means going outside the formally sanctioned channels to get things done. The real moves are the ones that are not written down anywhere. Every organization has two sets of rules. The formal rules, the org chart, the procedures, the stated values, and the informal rules. Who actually has power, what actually gets rewarded, and how decisions actually get made. The formal rules are public. The informal rules are never published, rarely discussed, but they're absolutely essential to understand. Here's what most people miss. Politics is not optional. You don't get to go to work and not do politics. You don't get to do business and not do politics. You don't get to be a citizen and not do politics. It's not something that you can opt out of while focusing on real work. Day-to-day life in any competitive organization is politics. The question isn't whether you'll play. You're already playing. You're just playing badly. The question is whether you're going to win or lose. That's the only question. The path to the inner circle is purposely kept ambiguous by those who've already made it. They share that information sparingly. They may never share it. Some deny there's a path at all. After all, if just anyone could get there, there'd be no value in having a ride, and it would undermine their power. So the first step is admitting what you're dealing with. Let's talk about that. Organizations vary in how much politics drives outcomes. So you need to know what kind of organization you're in. Now, we've done previous shows about looking at organizations in terms of their constitutions, kind of how the official organization runs, and also how power is structured. Is it a monarchy, an aristocracy, or is it a democracy? This is a little bit different. This is one where we talk about how much of the work is done outside of the nominal organization, out of the official rules. A minimally politicized organization is very rare. This means that most things go through the official channels. There's typically a sense of camaraderie because it could only exist in an organization where there's a lot of camaraderie between the people that work there or the people that are citizens. One person's gain is not seen as another person's loss. So rules get bent occasionally, but by and large, people treat each other with basic regard. If you find yourself in one of these organizations, bless yourself. Like, you're lucky, man. Most people never find such a place. You certainly won't find a state governed this way. But there are moderately politicized organizations as well. This is probably the most common. It's where things operate mostly by formal rules, 60%, but unsanctioned methods get used a lot of the time and in ways that can be denied if anyone complains, okay? So conflicts happen, but they don't last very long because you can't survive without being heavily political. You need to handle pockets of political activity, and you need to be able to go outside the normal rule structure to accomplish your projects anyway. Most people work in organizations like this. But then we've probably all worked in organizations that are highly politicized. Now, this is where conflict is frequent and pervasive. The formal rules are invoked only when convenient, and frankly, they're only invoked to punish. If you hear formal rules being invoked in a highly politicized company, it's just to hurt somebody. In groups and out groups are usually clearly defined. There's lots of taboo topics. The pattern for speech goes something like this. You make a subject undiscussable, and then you make the undiscussability of the subject itself undiscussable. So there's just no way to fix it. Who you know matters in organizations like this more than what you know. These can be very stressful, especially if you haven't figured out the games. Most of the companies I've worked for have fallen into the highly politicized category, largely because I've done a lot of turnaround work, and I've come into companies that are failing. And in order for us to get work done, we have to go outside of normal channels. And that was just a fact of life for me for most of my career. Then there's companies that I would say something go beyond just being highly politicized. I mean, they reach a pathological level. Let's just call them the pathologically politicized organizations. These are the absolute worst. You can't really even work for companies like this. I have attempted to twice. Every interaction you have is disputatious. Nearly every goal has to be achieved by going around formal procedures. You can't trust budgets. You can't even trust the accounting in these companies. People spend enormous amounts of energy watching their backs. They do that more than they do being productive. Information is hoarded and weaponized. So people throughout the company are operating on incomplete picture of the environment. And this leads to all kinds of inefficiencies. And look, man, I'm just going to say for these organizations, a quick death is merciful, but sometimes these organizations can just linger out there for a long time. Now, here's the thing. I've just described these political climates, and they can actually coexist within a single organization. You could have a pathological department inside a moderately political division, inside of a minimally political company. All right. So you have to think about kind of, micro political climates. Okay. And those climates can change over time. You get new people in, budgets change, reorganizations, and so forth. What your job is to accurately diagnose where you are and to recognize when it shifts. And that's what I'm going to help you do here. People have default political styles. So we can go down to the ultimate micro level, to just the individual. Okay. The purist believes in getting ahead through hard work alone. They typically decline to participate in politics. They trust others. They prefer organizations where competence gets rewarded directly. Early on in my career, I was a purist. Didn't take me very long to figure out the purist isn't going to get very far in most organizations, because purists thrive in minimally political environments. And even moderately political ones, they just get eaten alive. Many entrepreneurs are purists. That's why they're entrepreneurs. Okay, they can't exist in corporations. They build a company, and then once they built it, they leave it once it gets political, and they go start another company. That's actually, in my view, the main motivation of most entrepreneurs. There's what I call the team player, which I evolved into in the early 90s. This is someone who can work well with others, and I can participate in politics that advance the group's goals. But I tended to put my own goals second to the team's, and not willing to stab anybody in the back as we try to get our work done. Team players function best in minimally to moderately political organizations. In moderately political organizations, the team player is probably the best equipped to succeed. But in highly political environments, they're actually target number one. These people become targeted by other people who see that if you put them on a team, that guy's going to win. So all the other people turn against you. All right. Then there's what I call the street fighter. This is an individual who just uses rough tactics. They have no limits. They watch their back. They push hard for personal goals. They're slow to trust. They thrive on conflict. They thrive on it. Street fighters do well in highly political environments. They really don't have compunctions about doing what's necessary. Like I've met guys, I used to work with a guy, sales guy, who would literally do anything that was necessary and not have any conscience issues with it at all. These people, when they enter minimally political cultures, don't do well. They only work well in highly politicized or pathologically politicized cultures. Look, you aren't supposed to find this channel. The algorithm didn't recommend me. You found this because someone shared it or because you went looking for something the mainstream just won't give you. That's how real information moves now. Hand to hand, man to man, just like combat. I can't make it show you, I can't get YouTube to do what I want, but I can ask you to do one thing: subscribe and hit the bell. Not for me, for the next man looking for what you found. The gatekeepers control discovery. We control distribution. If this helped you, make sure you see the next one. Send it to someone who needs it. Cut through the bullshit. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. That's the play. Then there's the guy called the maneuverer. This is a person who plays political games in skillful but unobtrusive ways. He's a smooth operator. He looks for ulterior motives in others. He has little regard for formal rules, and he always makes sure everything is deniable. This would be the sigma male. If you're into the alpha, beta, gamma male terminology, this would be the sigma male. This is the person I became in the mid-90s. And it's the approach that let me do most of the consulting work that I did in some terribly difficult political environments. Maneuverers function best in highly political environments. In minimally political ones, they will eventually be detected and despised. I can assure you, I can confirm that. But here's the key insight from all these descriptions. Your style needs to fit the environment you're in. If you're a purist in a pathological organization, you need to get out. If you're a street fighter in a collaborative culture, get out. You got to know yourself, know your environment, and either adapt or move. Now, power in organizations is kind of like the mafia. It runs on favors. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Sounds crass, but it's how most successful careers actually work. It's how politics works. It's how most business is conducted. So think of yourself as the owner of a favor bank. What can you do for others? Your expertise, your connections, your time, even your attention. Some people just want attention. These are assets that you could deploy. Politically adept people inventory what they have to offer, and then they deploy it strategically to their benefit. The rule of reciprocity, of course, is ancient and powerful. When someone does you a favor, you owe them. How long you owe them depends on the size of the favor. Gratitude for a lifetime might be in order for someone who saved your career or made your dream position possible, but smaller favors, a smaller duration. And here's where people really go off in politics, in my opinion. This is what I've seen, especially young men who these videos are directed to. Young men show insufficient gratitude. They receive a major favor, say thanks once, and then they just move on. Okay, that's a political fumble, man. The favored donor notices this, and so does everyone who knows what happened, and your reputation takes a hit. Second mistake is expecting favors from people that you've never invested in. A lot of young men think they're owed favors. Asking someone for help when you have no track record with them, when you've never done a damn thing for them, and when you don't even know what they need, you never even ask them what they need, you don't even know what their issues are. Dude, that's not only amateur hour, that shit is going to turn somebody into an enemy. You cannot do that. Third mistake is just overdoing it. If you do too many things for people too often, the favors lose significance. Okay, you become that person who's always around, always helping, and therefore you become invisible. You might even become annoying. Okay? In fact, some people, if you do too much for them, begin to resent you because they feel like they owe you too much. Okay? So you don't want to give too much. Unexpected favors have some special power, though. Look, a thank you note a month after a conversation, or remembering something specific that someone mentioned and you give them credit in a meeting, helping someone at a moment when you just have nothing obvious to gain. Those are the kinds of things that will create a lasting impression precisely because they're uncommon. They show that you have honor, and they show that you're trustworthy and the kind of person that someone can build a long-term relationship with. So look for those opportunities. They can be huge leverage points for political power, believe it or not. In fact, if you look at how most Machiavellian CEOs rule, It's through the application of unexpected favors, not expected favors. We'll do a future video on that. So political sophistication requires that you have some observation skills that just most people don't develop. Much of daily communication happens through hint and innuendo. It's in the subtext. People say things in ways that allow them to deny what they meant, even if they go wrong. That's very common. And that's kind of how tact works, right? Tact is really saying what you mean in a way that's deniable so that it doesn't hurt other people's feelings. We did a previous video, I think it was my second or third video on this channel, which talks about reading and writing between the lines. And this is one of the most fundamental political skills that you can ever develop. And frankly, if you don't have it, you're just not going to be able to do anything. You're never going to be able to get into the secret circle that controls things. A CEO that sends a message of dismissal by refusing eye contact, a boss that praises someone so faintly that the audience understands he's actually being criticized, someone who gets assigned to a special project that everyone knows is a dead end. Look, man, if you can't read these signals, you're not going to last long, okay? People who read between the lines, they look for disconnects like this. They look for that slight sneer, a twitch of the eyes, a tone that doesn't quite match the words, a smile with the mouth but not with the eyes. It's when what's said doesn't match how it's said, you know that something's happening beneath the surface. Now watch for who gets invited to which meetings, who gets information first and who gets it last, who gets praised publicly and how enthusiastically. The inner circle communicates through inclusion and exclusion. Let me say that again. The inner circle communicates through inclusion and exclusion, right? Subtle signals that those outside will often miss entirely. So the key skill here is to suspend your assumptions. Most people are what researchers call cognitive misers. We jump to conclusion based on incomplete information. We assume what matters to us matters to other people, and we believe that what other people say just at face value. But the politically astute person does not assume. They assess. They do not assume. They assess. They look for benefits to those involved. They ask, cui bono, every time somebody says something. They maintain a healthy skepticism about easy answers. They study human nature the way, I guess, maybe a professional studies a craft. The way, a veterinarian studies a sick animal. That's how he looks at people and tries to figure out what's wrong with them. How could they harm him? And what could he offer him, right? This is the kind of skill that he can only develop by using it. This is another one of these cases where it's a practical skill. You can't read about it and figure out how to do it. You just got to ask yourself these questions and see the patterns. Now, when politics get really rough, it's time to start recognizing the moves, okay? You can read people now. Now you got to know the moves that they're going to do. Let's talk about it. I've already mentioned some of them. Damning with faint praise. This means praising someone so half-heartedly that the audience understands you're actually criticizing them. The frozen out scenario, putting someone in a low priority projects that leaves them out of meetings, cuts them off from the information loop. The company hopes they'll quit and save everyone the trouble of firing them. Poisoning the well, casually dropping derogatory comments about someone into conversations. I'm very fond of Sarah. I don't know why so many people dislike her. The denial is just built in. Fake left, go right. Allowing someone to believe one condition exists when another holds. That's the power of information. If you have information, the company's going to go one way, but this other person thinks it's going to go the other, and they misprepare. Well, you're setting up a deception that allows you to outperform them, and they may be doing it to you. The best defense is really just relationship capital. That's how you protect yourself from all these moves. If you've built goodwill with people over time, you have what psychologists call idiosyncrasy credits. You have a cushion of trust that absorbs attacks. And people who are going to assist you in getting the information you need, they're going to discount the rumors about you. And people who don't know you will just have nothing to weigh against them, right? Having good relationships is the most important thing. That's why I began talking about favors and how the favor system actually works. So look, If you're a young man, you've probably been focusing your life on technical competence, and that will get you in the door. But political savvy determines how far you're going to go once you get in the door. Again, this is not cynicism, it's realism. It's how power actually works in every organization larger than 3 people. Know your environment, know your style, build that favor bank up. Learn to read what's not being said, recognize the games before they're being played on you. Understand to hear what's being said in the silences. The inner circle actually exists, and the path to it is real, even if it's kept deliberately obscure. Most people absolutely never figure this out. They blame bad luck, unfair bosses, office politics as something other people do. But now you know better. The future belongs to men who see clearly and act accordingly. That's what I've got for today. Get off the internet and go do something with this.
The Jeff Younger Show, signing off.